Our vision statement at G&J is that we exist to promote the success of, with pride, everyone that we touch. And pride is an acronym for us. So it's our professionalism, it's our responsibility, our integrity, our drive, and our energy. What we hope to accomplish today is take a look at big data and how that can be impactful for you guys as operators. So just to give you kind of a little overview of our agenda, we're going to break down big data, kind of tell you what it is, a little bit of the history behind it, things of that nature. But then we're going to delve into three pretty big P's. You know, any of you marketing students out there know that there's 4 P's to marketing. The only one that we've left off here is the placement piece, the channels, the logistics, that side of it. So we're going to talk about pricing, we're talking about promotions and products. And in each segment of this, we're hoping to give you guys a vision of the future. So a lot of what we're going to talk about, some of it you're going to say, hey, I've got that, I'm using that today. How can I use it better? But also some of the technology that's out there that's going to allow you to advance your big data projects to the next step. Some of the things that may not be present today, but we find out there in the retail world. So what is big data? I'll tell you what big data is not. Big data is not some giant machine that your IT guys are hiding in the back of your warehouse or something of that nature. What big data usually is just a collection of a lot of simple data, a lot of easy to use stuff that when it starts piling up and you get these massive numbers of observations, now I don't know what to do with it. Now Excel's just not big enough for me to get what I need out of it. And I'm a big proponent that anything in life can be learned through a Dilbert comic. So in this case, we've got Bossman over here, stating that, hey, the consultants say that 3 quintillion bytes of data are created every day. It comes from everywhere, it knows all, and according to the book of Wikipedia, its name is big data. So the first thing I want to ask is, who knows what a quintillion is? Does anybody know what that number means? Because strangely enough, even though I think that Dilbert fits into every presentation, I don't always get my facts from Dilbert. So when I first saw this, I'm thinking to myself, 3 quintillion, wow, is that even a real number? And I fact checked it. Guess what? That's real. That's real. But come on, somebody give me a guess as to what you think a quintillion is. It's a 1 with how many zeros? Somebody says 50. It's a little high. 15's really close. 15's really close. 15 is a quadrillion. It's 18 zeros. So a 1 and 18 zeros. That's how much data is being generated every day. In fact, that's so much that if you take all the data that we've gathered since prehistory in the world, in the next 2 years we will surpass that at the rates that we're gathering data today. That's big data. So to give you some examples of what that 3 quintillion bytes of data looks like, I'm not sure if you can see it too well back there, but what that is this is every minute of every day in 2017, shown up on the screen here. So Netflix, 69,444 hours of data is being processed. That's how many movies are being watched in this 1 minute right now. So I've been up here, I don't know how many minutes at this point. But for every one of those minutes, 69,000 hours of Netflix. YouTube, 4.1 million videos were watched in that 1 minute. As we come on around, my favorite down here, Uber, 45,787 rides. I mean, when I was a kid, I was told that getting in the car with a stranger was called hitchhiking. Now people pay for it, and I do it every time I travel now. It's Uber, and it's wonderful. And there's over 45,000 rides every minute. You spin on around spam. This one blows my mind away. The amount of the data that's in a spam email when you open it up. I don't know how many Nigerians need money, but that's a lot of spam. 103 million spam emails were sent every minute in 2017. And then the one that I absolutely love and hate both. Love because I have an Echo, and Alexa and me, we kind of have a thing that my wife knows about. But, Amazon, $250,000 every minute is what Amazon makes in their revenue. That's phenomenal. So all of that data is being gathered up. So you can imagine it grows really quickly. How many millennials? Can I get you to raise your hand in the audience? 1, 2. I count you as a millennial. 2. Yeah, whatever. Jeff, yeah. I just want to say thank you. 15 million texts. So I guarantee you that jumped up at the millennials. But let's look at an example. And I think it was one of our earlier speakers. I think it was Paul that had brought this example up earlier. It may have been Jeff, talking about average unit price. Pretty simple, right? So I am a father. I've got 2 kids. I've got a 6-year-old and I've got a 9-year-old. And like any father who is a complete geek himself, I brainwash my children. So when we do little math exercises or stuff like that, and I brainwash my children this way. So we'll go buy something, and I'll hand it to my daughter. She's 9 years old. She gets real excited. She'll give me the average unit price. So let's go down a little scenario here, thinking about your micro markets. Thinking about a micro market. You go up, you make a purchase. I buy 3 items. Pretty easy, Again, my 9-year-old, she's happy to give you the average unit price that's on your ticket there. But in an hour, we have several transactions take place. And again, she's probably like, Dad, I got this. Don't worry. When we start hitting the day, the month, and the year, she's looking at me and saying, Dad, I'm tired of playing. Here's your laptop. Use that little Excel thing that you do all the time, and you do it yourself. But then it grows beyond that, because you guys don't just have one market. You've got multiples. In fact, you've got routes and routes of markets. You've got warehouses that are servicing those markets. You've got an entire enterprise. So at this point, you're looking up and you're adding up. Every time they check out at that kiosk, you're generating that data. That's a data point. So for something as simple as creating an average price, it's now taking you lots of space. In fact, you keep hearing me talk about Excel. Excel spreadsheets have been the way we've crunched numbers and analyzed for decades now, since the 80s. And even though Microsoft's done what they can to keep up with that spreadsheet, we've still got a 1,000,000-row limitation. How many of you guys in here are doing more than 1 million transactions? Vending, micro markets, there's quite a few hands in here. Well, what that tells me is, just for something as simple as this, you've now exceeded the capacity of the most popular tool out there in business today, the Excel spreadsheet. So how did we get here? What led to this just explosion of data that's out there? I can remember back in 1992. Some of you millennials probably don't remember back in 1992. But this was before Al Gore invented the internet. But there were about 1 million devices that were connected. That's it. We get through an age of the dot-com bubble, and we get to the point where we're now at about 500 million devices. And these are laptop computers. That's kind of what you're looking at there, that are connected to the internet and generating all of these data points, these touches that are out there. But then fast forward again to 2009, this concept of the Internet of Things came about. These are devices that are interconnected around the world that are sensors, they're tracking data, they're computers. So what I want to do, again, big data is not always something that just gets people screaming and excited and stuff like that. I'm going to get your blood moving a little bit by asking a couple of quick questions. First off, I'm going to start with, does anybody have their laptop in the room? Go ahead and stand up. Now, there's a lot of you that didn't bring your laptop. How about Fitbit, smartwatch? Anybody have any wearable tech that's with you? Go ahead and stand up as well. Does anybody have a smart home? Have you guys seen these things? They're just absolutely incredible. The little thermostats, stuff like that at your house, home monitoring systems. Anybody have those kind of things? Okay. Yeah, if you're standing up, go ahead and raise your hand as well. All right. And then they've come out with this really cool thing that Greg absolutely detests. He thinks it's the devil. And it's these smart cars, these wonderful features. You can now snap them into your car. It records your speed. Insurance companies love that kind of stuff because they know that they can lower your rate, raise your rate, whatever they want to do. And then lastly, I'm going to ask, how many people brought your smartphone in? Who has a phone? Go ahead and stand up. Everybody stand up. Now we're going to do some of that. What's it called? Orange theory. So, no, we're not. Look around. Is there anybody not standing up in here? If there is somebody, then I want to shake their hand. But I think everybody is standing up at this point because you are now participants in the Internet of Things. You guys, everybody, you can go ahead and sit down. So everyone is now, that you're a part of it, whether you're a willing participant of big data, you're gathering it. I wear a Fitbit, and it's one of those things where it records every second what my heart rate is. It tells me how many calories I burn, and it gives me these nice little graphs and stuff like that makes me feel like I'm losing weight. It's not. It's lying. It's not really happening. But it's wonderful technology. But it's building up all of these data centers full of information, and are contributing to, depending upon who you are, the problem or the wonderful future that's coming. And there's an expected, by 2020, 50.1 billion devices. So a lot of you may have seen it. Amazon will say the little tap button that goes on your washing machine or dryer or something like that. Hey, I need to order Tide. You find, like I said, Nest is just a wonderful one, controlling your thermostats, your fire alarms. You've got locking mechanisms for smart homes and things of that nature. Just all kinds of smart devices that are really, really incredible devices. So now we know kind of where it came from. We know what it is. We've walked through an example of it. What I want to do is I kind of want to steer into how do we use it? How do we make use of some of this data? And it doesn't matter who you are. The 4 principles that we've got on the board here, they're going to be found in everything you do. Whether you're the insurance agent that's using that the Verizon Hum to look and see how fast Greg's driving around in his Ferrari, or whether you're vending operations manager, and you're just looking at the sales. You're going to use each one of these 4 steps. The first step in working with a big data project is going to be the collection piece. So this is critical. Has everybody heard the old cliche of trash in, trash out? So I think we even heard some of that earlier about how do I trust the data that I'm collecting and stuff like this. All of that's happening here in our collection stage. Collection should always include data scrubbing as well. You don't want, Sally Sue who buys that Reese's cup and that Mountain Dew every morning. We don't want to have nulls or empty spots in our data, when we go to add it all up, because what is $5 plus $3 plus null equal? It causes some problems in what we do. So we always want to scrub our data, and we do that in the collection phase. And that's where your IT guys, you've got people that you hide in the basement, and you kind of shove food under the door and stuff like that. That's kind of their job. Work with them. And then we move up and we move into your BI departments. This is where the analysis starts working. This is that app I was telling you about for my Fitbit that tells me how many calories. It's the pretty dashboards, the unified scorecards that I'd heard mentioned when we were talking about financials. This is where we start looking, but again, we're looking at history. So we're looking at data that's already been collected. And where we want to get to it is predicting the future. Testing. We want to set up these tests. So we first have to ask ourselves, what do I want to accomplish with this data? I've now got lots of information. I've got it on a nice pretty spreadsheet or a pretty graph in front of me. What do I want it to do for me? Do I want to grow the price of the slot in the machine? Do I want to optimize my rebates? that I'm receiving from my manufacturers? What do I want to accomplish with this? Do I want to know more about my consumers? I think there was a great question or a great point that Jeff had made about the touches with our customers. Are we looking to increase customer satisfaction? And if we're looking to increase customer satisfaction, are we using our CRM tools, our Salesforce.coms and things of that nature to monitor those numbers? So in a testing phase, this is where we identify what we want to accomplish, but then we choose a sample. We choose something small. I don't want you going out there and changing everything across all of your markets the entire way. Perhaps you're looking at it and saying, I'm going to start here with 10 markets. Maybe it's just my call centers that I'm working with, this gray collar avenue to see what I can do. And if I get the results that I want here, then logic says that I'm going to roll this out. When I roll this out company-wide, I'm going to make a decision that's going to impact my entire enterprise, my entire organization.
One of the things that we want to talk about at the end of this as well, and part of why we're taking you through how much data there is, and I've had conversations with Vic in the past and some of what Jeff talked about, there's a lot of basics, a lot of fundamentals, things that you can look at in business, but there's data overload. So what is the things that you think you need? And it's going to vary. It's going to vary by all of you as to what you want to look at. There's no one path to success, but a big thing that we see when we're dealing with different operators, manufacturers, it doesn't matter on data, is they don't have a clear vision of what they want to see, what they want to get out of it. They have it, but it becomes overwhelming. So if you can break it down into those little pieces, that's the real key.
And exactly what Greg's talking about there, that's defining your tests. If we can learn from you, there's plenty of consultants out there. There's plenty of brokers. I mean, a broker is a great person to go to when you want to gain some learnings from your manufacturers and such. But if you can identify what it is you want to accomplish, then we can build that test around it and launch it to the future. Now, one of the first areas that I want to cover in here, whoa, that's not good. Maybe I'm just going to grab this iPad and carry it with me. I'm amongst the rest of you with my Internet of Things. I brought plenty of them with me. So let's talk about pricing. There's a lot of pricing models. And unfortunately, the pricing model that we've seen most predominant, as a broker, again, we're in working with every one of you guys. And unfortunately, the thing that we're finding in our pricing models that most of you guys are implementing, maybe not most of you in this room, because you guys are really the progressives, you're leading the front, but we're finding the old Keystone pricing model. And I'm not sure, for those of you that don't know what Keystone pricing is, I'll give you a quick run through. It's the original pricing model that retail adopted that said, I'm a manufacturer, I sell it to a distributor, and or a retailer, and I'm going to mark it up. It's going to be 50% of my margin, so it's going to be 100% markup. And then I'm going to sell it to a consumer, so it's going to be another 50%. So you just double the price. Whatever my cost was, I'm going to double it, and that's the way I set my pricing. And that's okay. That's a good place to start. In the absence of data, that's probably one of the better places to start until you can gain some learning. But we just talked about all of these systems that we've got that are feeding in this information to us. So we can do better, because one of the biggest flaws with Keystone pricing, or really if you've got any kind of a hard set cost plus margin pricing model, the hard part is you're losing turns. So I'm so set on the fact that this item cost me $1 and I'm going to sell it for $2. You're slowing your turn rate down. And what that does to you, especially in our market, that might be fine if you're JCPenney. Well, it didn't work out so well with them. But if you're, what you really want to focus on is you've got sales that you got to consider. So that pricing model, while easy, is not the best for our industry. So to give you an idea of some other pricing models that we find out there, and this one even, we were discussing it last night at dinner even, the skimmer pricing model, or the skimming or the creaming pricing model. So for those of you that have fresh food, you generally see this model in electronics. How many people have a big screen TV somewhere in their house? most of you. You know that when they first came out, you remember how much you paid for it? Pretty pricey. Well, now I can go down Best Buy. I can probably get I can get a TV that'll cover the entire wall here for $500 or something like that. But they do that. You set the high premium price, and then over time, you kind of bring it down so that you're covering that initial cost. Well, where do we see that in our industry? I see it in food. You've got food that you're producing that you want to get the maximum premium price for at the beginning, but then as that food stales out, how do I recover the cost that I put into it while still, hopefully even making some money on it? Well, that's more that skimmer model. I'm gonna create it, I'm gonna sell it, and when it gets close to that stale date, I'm gonna run some sort of promotion to kind of sell it and get it out of there pretty quick. My personal favorite model, not only because I found a really good picture of it to put on a slide presentation, but one that you'll find NAMA's EDP program really getting behind, is the idea of value-based pricing. So this is a model where you take cost out of it. You're not looking at your costs on the front end. Instead, what you're doing is you're looking at your customer relationship. You're finding out whether, what is the customer really trying to achieve here? And then matching with them what you can get for it. How much are they willing to pay for the service level that I'm bringing them? How many times am I stopping there? What level of food are they looking for? Are they looking for a kind bar, or are they okay with just a no name brand nut bar? And then you can actually build your relationship while at the same time maximizing your profits. So items like Jack Links. For years, we've looked at items and said, I need to get double. But the amount of money that you're going to make on some of those premium items eclipses what you were making on those products of yesteryears. So you can stand to make less in your margin and still drive your revenue up at the same time. Now, a pricing model that, quite honestly, I love the idea of, but hate the implementation of within our industry, is dynamic pricing. So dynamic pricing just sounds so cool. And what it does with data is it's constantly gathering information. So imagine a smart vending machine that's sitting out there and, it says, we're at Myrtle Beach. It's kind of warm outside. It's a sunny day. I should be able to charge more for my beverages. Kind of cool, right? Well, Coke thought so back in 2011, and they tried it. What do you think happened? Didn't go so well. As a matter of fact, it basically led them to everybody pointing the finger and saying, price gouging. This is ridiculous. So I caution, I stamped it on the bottom of the slide, choosing the right pricing strategy, but don't go crazy with big data. Big data, your IT guy is going to tell you, man, this is the best way. If you've got the right CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, they're probably going to look at it and say, you know what, let's leverage that big data appropriately because we can't run off our consumer. Our consumer is always chief and king. So let's talk about some promotions. When talking about promotions, you've got to start with your loyalty program. How many of you guys in here have a loyalty program that you're working with? Like a US Connect or USG, okay. Your loyalty program, the reason this ties so heavily with promotions is it's your first source for getting to know that end consumer. It's what allows us to get the information about them. And there's these nifty little tricks that, I'd mentioned that I'm going to give you some things to look for and things to harass whoever's managing your loyalty program to stay on top of. And that's a tool that skims data. Have you ever noticed that lately when you go and you try to sign up for a new login or a new new user credentials, it's become very, very prominent that they'll say, oh, well, if you're a Facebook user, just log in with your Facebook account. Has everybody seen that? Pretty common, right? That's tricky. It's really nice because what it does is without even thinking about it, oh, you're the end user. I've only got to remember one username, one password. They did this for me. They didn't do it for the consumer. They did it so that they could get your Facebook username and associate it with the account. Because now there are tools that exist out there that can harness all of the unstructured data of social media. Now that I know that you're actively logging in with your Facebook account, then I know your Facebook name. I know how I can start harnessing the information about what are your likes, what are your dislikes. Now, like I said, this is huge in retail today. This is where we're going to see the loyalty programs gain a lot more traction. I've not seen this in vending yet. I've not seen this in convenience services. So this is what I'm watching right now, is how do we get to that next step? How do we get to where we can learn about the brands and the passions that our people have, our consumers have, for the brands that we're offering them out there. Now, I've been very fortunate to work closely with Kellogg's in my time at G&J. And Kellogg's had this really innovative idea to stop profiling, or not necessarily to stop, but to augment their way of their way of looking at demographics. So you heard me earlier ask how many millennials we got in the room. Well, that's kind of the traditional way that we look at demographics. You know, we look at it by generation gaps. You know, the ages, what year were you born in? You know, what gender do you fall in? Those kinds of things. Kellogg's took it to the next level, and they did a behavioral demographic study. And what they said is, I want to know my consumer better. I want to know why and how they buy. And so they launched this on a global level. They looked at it across all channels. And they essentially were able to boil it down into 7 categories. Everybody falls into kind of one of these seven zones. And that's fine and good. I think that's great for grocery, but I don't work in grocery. I work in the convenience services industry. So I wanted to see, how does it apply? How can we take that same study and move it on down closer to what we do on an everyday basis? And what we found is, of the 7 categories, 96% fall within 3 of those categories. Pretty powerful information when you think about that. Out of all the shoppers that are out there, all of our consumers within our industry, kind of falls within about 3 different kinds of people. The autopilot. That is your guy that walks in every morning, starts his job at 8 o'clock, and he starts with the Reese's Sticks and the Mountain Dew every morning. You've got him. As a matter of fact, about 1/3 of your customers are on autopilot. They get the same thing. They don't ask for much. They're going to buy it. Now, the downside is if you lose that account, they're going to buy from your competitor as well, because all they know is, I have my likes, and that's where I'm going for it. The second largest, and only a point shy from where we were with the autopilot, is our spontaneous decision maker, our spontaneous decider. This is the impulse buyer. And believe it or not, it's actually more millennials, more female-gendered millennials, and they're the person that usually steps out and says, I deserve this. It's a bad day, and I need a little pick-me-up. Let me get those Snickers bites, because I just got out of a board meeting and I deserve this, or I did a great job. I'm gonna go get that Pepsi. These are also the targets for anyone in kind of a specialty retail or alternative retail scenario. So that's the reason that you start seeing at Lowe's Hardware all of the Snickers bars and all of the candies and stuff like that. They're targeting this demographic, and this makes up, again, almost 1/3 of your customer base within this room. And then the last class, which steps us down a few percentage points, is our passionate explorer. This is the person, generally male, little bit. It's what you would consider the older millennial, and they're the ones that have a little excess cash to spend, but they look and they see, wow, Kind just came out with a new breakfast bar. Kind, trendy. I like to look cool. I'm going to try that. never tried it before. I want to see what that's like. This is the reason that we constantly change our menus. This is the reason why we try to be innovative. We're putting this in front of our customers to cover the 30. It was between 30 and 31%. I don't have it to the 100th decimal point for you, but that's the number of users that fall within this passionate explorer area. It's a pretty large percentage of people that we're really targeting and want to make sure that we're appeasing. Now, what we don't find is we don't find 4% of the rest of your customer base is going to fall within these other areas. You know, the things like the bargain hunter, the healthy enthusiast. I mean, we all hear that the millennial wants healthy food, but has anybody actually gone out and said, I'm going to do just healthy? And if you did, what'd your sales do? It's because they don't fit within our demographic, our consumers' behavior. Yes, the millennial, the all-elusive millennial, the 50% of the workforce by 2020, yes, they want to be healthy, but most of them aren't shopping in our arena. And again, bargain hunter, that's another example, regimented skeptic, pressured organizer. Those are the ones that aren't really the focus for where we're at today. So I want to take it to the next step. From loyalty programs, I want to talk to you about a little study that G&J's done over the last year and a half, right, Craig? We've worked with looking at the data with certain operator partners that have said, hey, I want to participate. I will provide you my sales data. And in exchange, you guys can come back and tell me what learnings you found. And one of the key pieces here, again, it's kind of dependent upon the loyalty program. We got to know who the customer is first. We have to be able to segment and say, this guy is this guy. You know, in the old the vending machine, you go up with cash, old time way before cashless. You went up there, you didn't necessarily know if that was Sally Sue buying it, if that was Billy Bob buying it. You didn't know. But so we focused our efforts on the market. And we did what's called basket analysis. So again, let's look at the grocery side of things. Does everybody have a value card or a VIP card for your grocery store? Does everybody have one of those? Again, clever little trick. They didn't give me that card just to give me a discount. They gave me that card so that when I check out at Kroger or Ingles or Publix or whatever your grocery store of choice is, they're looking at it and saying, oh, wow, he bought Coke, he never buys Pepsi, and he always buys this with this. And they marry up that data and they pair it together to see what I'm thinking. Well, we did the same thing, and we did it at the vending level or the micro market level. And the graph that you see on the right here is what we found. You know, across 6,091 markets, which makes up about a third of the industry. You know, it's debatable. If you look at NAMA's numbers, they're going to tell you we're over 20,000 micro markets. Well, there's been 20,000 placements. Active micro markets, we're sitting somewhere 18 to 19,000 micro markets by year end last year. 38% said, I just buy a drink. And that's all they bought, some sort of a beverage. 29% snack only and 10% food only. But start looking at some of those overlaps. Look at the drinks and snacks. 13% bought a drink and a snack. As a matter of fact, 15% bought a drink and a snack. But 2% of that 15% went the next step, and they bought food with it as well. Why is this important? Why does knowing this help you? When you start looking at your models, how you're going to sell, am I interested in bundling options? You know, bundling is one way that you can actually raise the value within the sale, within the ticket sale. But let's also look at it from a promotional discounting perspective. If I know that 30% of my people are on autopilot, or 33% are on autopilot, and I know that, you know, Billy Bob comes in every morning and starts his day with the Reese's Sticks and the Mountain Dew, and he always buys them together, Why do I need to put a discount on both of those? If I know that every time I see somebody buy Reese's Sticks, they're going to buy a beverage. They're going to buy something to go with it. I now can target my discount. I can put my money, I can put my rebate money on the item that I know is going to generate the additional upsell. Right? Make sense?
The other part that goes around what Thad's talking to there as well, and I don't know, I can't remember if you got the numbers on this, but we also worked with a lot of operators to look and see what happened if there was a discount versus what happens if I just promoted the two products together. And we saw just as good, in a lot of cases, a better lift when there was no discount. It was just in some form or fashion, either through digital advertising or some other way, making them aware that soda buyer, here's the other things that I have, just planting that thought in their mind. And how easy is that? It's no discounts, no changing the prices, no keeping up with anything. It's just making them aware of what you have to go with that soda or with that candy bar.
That's exactly right. And that leads us right into our next topic, which is the digital advertising piece. We furthered our study, and we looked and said, what happens when you just put some sort of a screen, digital advertising source, at the point of the decision? You know, what happens when you place a screen with advertisements on there, say over the snacks, rather than waiting until you get to the kiosk? And we looked to see what that did for you guys as the operators. You know, so same store sales, that was the metric that we were looking for. And we saw a 6% lift. So we compared micromarket without digital advertising, you know, for their 4 weeks of sales. And then we compared it once the digital advertising source was introduced into the marketplace, same market. And we saw a 6% lift on average for our sales. So much so that actually paid for the entire solution itself. So that's almost like a no-brainer, instant money in the account. But beyond that, to Greg's point, what we also found was that we didn't have to offer them money in a lot of cases. The sustainability, when we offered them a discount, we saw more of a spike, a little bit sharper spike in the sales. But then when the discount went away, we saw it drop back off rather quickly. But when we just put in front of them, you know, a Red Bull advertisement, you know, people jumping off a cliff with a Red Bull in their hand, we saw that lifted the sales, and it kept it at a sustained rate for the next couple of months. That's powerful. So now, what can you do with that information? Well, I mean, you can do a lot with advertising. There's ways that you can take that, and my recommendation is take it for what it is. Take it for the lift that's in sales for you. But also think about what you can do. We found that you could actually sway within a category up to 24%. So if we're running a Hershey's advertisement versus a Mars, then we could actually see a swing within that category of up to 24% where they were buying the item that was on advertising. Yes?
6% total lift on the entire store.
Yes.
Through running digital advertising.
Yes.
Promotions.
Yes.
How many promotions did that include? Were they all endemic product in the store?
So they were all in-store promotions, and what we were looking at were 10 elements. So 10, essentially, you can think of it as a very, very nice PowerPoint slide presentation. So like I said, you know, Red Bull may have a video piece or something like that. There's 10. And we had one slide that would actually have a repeat of up to four impressions for that same thing. So that obviously that one would get the focus of the mindset.
And again, not all of them were at a promoted discount. It was just strictly making the consumer aware or make them think more about the products that they know where they were there. Because you think back about the autopilot consumer, which was the biggest group, they don't shop, they don't look because they know what they want. So that's where we think it really helped sustain that growth long term, was just making everyone more aware of it.
And so you guys, as operators, are probably constantly battling the rebate game. Hey, I got Frito over here telling me I need to have this many placements and I got to have this kind of a growth program, this kind of a volume to hit my number. Think about that swing that I just described. If you're short on your rebate number and you need to get that lift, you need to get to that next tier with a particular manufacturer, look at which programs are going to pay you the most and gather that money on the back end. Run your digital advertising, steer your consumers where you need the volume to be coming in at. And then I think Jeff hit a great point earlier. You adjust your pricing to what's selling. Use the digital advertising as an extra tool to help grow and direct your consumers so that the items that you've adjusted your prices on are the items getting some attention.
And the other thing with the digital advertising that we're starting to talk with operators about as well is how do you use that for account retention? How do you use that 365 to be selling the benefits of your company? That was talked about earlier in Paul and Jeff's presentation. You gain some accounts, you lose some accounts. Well, what can you do? What can you say about your company every day on that same advertisement to let them feel closer to you, what you're doing for them, who your company is, to make a stronger connection? Does that help you save one account a year, 2 accounts a year? Don't know. But there's a great communication tool, not just the product, but the company.
Did y'all analyze, so you get 6% lift throughout the market?
Yes.
Did you analyze where that lift came from?
We did. The majority of it was through, and I don't have the percentages with me, but I can pull that up and share it with you later. The majority of it did stem from the items that were on the digital advertising, and predominantly from the item that we had on the 4 slides that were repeating in that 10-slide rotation.
Were those items predominantly CPG products?
Yes, they were.
Did y'all do anything around food at all?
We did not.
No, and we're continuing to work with this because it's ongoing, and that's part of what we want to do is what happens now when you focus on certain categories and those kind of things. And hopefully we'll be working with some of you guys on that.
Yes.
Were all screens at the point of purchase or not the point of purchase, or were any kind of decision-making area, like the snacks that are about?
These were in the decision-making area. So these were not the advertisements that would run on the kiosk, for instance. So this would be a screen that would be over in the snack area where the user is actually making the decision.
And what we found on that is typically by the time they got to the kiosk, they're ready to go. And it's very, very few times are you going to get somebody to go back, oh, I didn't realize this. So where the impact came.
Sure.
Right,
Sure.
But having it up where it was more visible where they're shopping had the greatest success by far.
Were you putting them right in the snack racks or above?
Above the snack racks. So the third P that we wanted to hit was products. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, share some of the data, the findings that we had about the products that, the product categories that we see success in, both in dollar share and the year-over-year growth, but speak to you a little bit about picking the right product choices. So we looked at the product mix, and we use a statistic, make sure I quote this off exactly right. It's called SKU productivity. Does anybody in here use SKU productivity as a KPI for working with your product mix? Okay, I'm not seeing a lot of hands. So what we do here is we take the percent of sales for your items, and we divide that by the percent of SKUs that you have within your market. And then we multiply it by 100 just to give it the nice index number that we're looking for. And what that's going to tell you is, you may have, this is more about that rebate optimization and how do we make that happen, because what you're going to find is you've got a lot of newcomers. They were just splashing the pans. They came up, but they're actually diluting your business. But what this will find is this will bring you back to kind of your core items, because again, our findings were that the core is what's really driving the majority of your revenue. It's probably not in that new organic, healthy pita chip that just came out that, that guy's not paying you any money on your rebate program. But what if I could pour that into a Cheez-It, something that is considered, a high item that's being purchased by my consumer base, that is something that pairs well with other items that will increase my total rebate return from a given manufacturer. And then also, we found that there's not enough emphasis being placed on day parts today. So when you're day parting, out of the 6,091 markets that we looked at, 50% of your sales occur between breakfast and lunch. That's probably not that surprising to most of you guys. Is that correct? Everybody pretty much knew that breakfast is hot. It's on trend. But what may be surprising to you is 45% of your sales occur after 5 p.m. That surprised me. So show of hands, is that surprising to anybody else? Okay. So that's an interesting. So as an operator, you need to ask yourself, you need to be diving into the big data, looking at it and saying, if almost half of my sales are happening after 5 p.m. when I'm not rolling trucks, do I have the right amount that's there? Am I running out at 10 p.m. and I'm not restocking again until 8 a.m.? What could my sales have been if I'd had the appropriate amount and the right product mix for the hours that were up there? That's a very good point. That's a very, very good point. So if you can increase the input of the big data that you're coming, I mean, obviously the machine is collecting that information, but try to refocus your efforts and find out when is the sale taking place. And what you're going to find is the majority of it, 50% morning breakfast to lunch, not so surprising, but a huge number of sales taking place after 5 p.m.
So that's saying only 5% occur between lunch and 5 p.m.
That's correct. That's correct. And I've got it broken down in another presentation I'd be happy to share with anybody on smaller day part segments, if we wanted to look at just the, up to 10 a.m. segment and things of that nature. Is there another question?
Yeah, the lunch to dinner sales, we go to all of our markets, we said we noticed that that's the best time. Don't show up at 8 o'clock and try to do a market reset. So we go in the afternoon.
Because it's calm and quiet. Yeah, little impact. And again, somebody else, they just mentioned this, and I thought it was an incredible idea, so I'll go ahead and share it with you. Look at those slow times of the day to kind of offload some of those stales. Utilize some of the other tools that we've talked about here, the digital advertising. You can actually schedule digital advertising to the day part. So if you know that that's a slow period, and you know that everybody's going to be going home, they're going to be walking right by that micro market, why wouldn't I run some sort of hey, it's happy hour, grab your sandwich for, X off, or get whatever's left over is $1, whatever that is, to kind of burn through those, and you end up recouping your cost as opposed to it just going straight to sales.
The difference in the mix of the sales at different times of the day, different day parts?
Yes. So what we've done, we worked with, again, you guys as the operators to gather the sales data piece, but then we married it up with the digital advertising that literally tracks every impression that's out there, so that we can take the two, put it together, and say, this was showing on the screen. If a Snickers bar was on the screen at 3:02 in the afternoon, these 5 people came in and bought it during that same window. So we can marry up the day parts, what's advertising at the same time as when the sale took place.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to share some of the category information that we found on snack products. Obviously, and again, I don't have the beverage piece, it's just the snack side of it. Salty snacks are, again, I don't think that's a surprise for anybody. That's on trend. Everybody is looking to that one. Candy has shrunk over the years. Damn millennials, they don't eat as many Snickers bars as they used to, or as Gen Xers did. So you see the red, that's our candy. Sweet goods going to green, so on and so forth. And I believe you've got where's David? You've got this one in their thumb drive, correct? Okay, perfect. So you guys have all of these statistics. I would encourage you, this information is based on, like I said, about a third of the industry in micro markets. So it'd be worthwhile to kick this over to your BI guy and have him look to see where do we sit, in comparison to where the rest of the industry is at. Now, same store dollar sales and percent change versus a year ago. That's a mouthful. In other words, which categories are doing well? Which ones do we start seeing some receding sales in? Obviously, crackers. This one, well, let me go to the top one. Salty snacks is growing more than ever before. No surprise. This one shocked me a little bit. Crackers, number 2, 6.2% growth versus a year ago. This is your Cheez-Its. Cheez-Its is being your number one cracker item. But this is also your Wheat Thins. This includes your Lance sandwich crackers and things of that nature, which we've seen some recession on. But yet at the same time, the category as a whole is up 6.2% over the last 52 weeks. Meat snacks, again, that one didn't surprise me too much, 5% growth. And then fruit snacks, like I said, I do a lot of work with Kellogg's. This one didn't surprise me, but fruit snacks are seeing a hard time right now, and you're probably noticing that you're not putting as many out within your markets. Any questions on this? All right. So we've kind of talked a little bit about pricing. We've talked about products. We've talked about promotions. We didn't leave a whole slide for placement, and the channels and how do we delve into some of the problems that we're bumping into as an industry. Greg had a couple of questions that I know he wanted to throw to the field.
He wouldn't let me put placement in it because he said this is about data. But for what we do, placement has got to be a big part of what we think about. I saw on the news just this week where Amazon by the end of 19, but very likely by the end of 18, will start dealing with prescription drugs because everything they do, everything that they're trying to do going forward, and we learned this at the NAMA Executive Forum that we went to last year, it's about removing the friction points, making it so easy to buy from me that that's what the consumer does. So the more that Amazon can pile on, whether it's prescription drugs or whatever, the more dependent we all get on them. And then you just look at what's happened in retail history. Look at what Walmart did to all the big retailers. Nobody, the competitors, didn't see it coming. But look at what Amazon's doing. How many of you here get boxes every day to your home or to your office from Amazon? Well, your customers get boxes every day from them too. And if you go look at Amazon, they're selling all kinds of snacks. They got variety packs, straight packs, whatever it is you want. And if I'm going to be ordering from them 3-4 days a week, why wouldn't I just order that too? It all comes in. They've made it so simple, so easy. I don't even have to get up. I don't have to go anywhere. So those are things that we have to think about with placements. How do we push out? How do we, and one of the most common things that I've heard every operator that I've talked to talk about is what percentage of the workforce comes to the market or the vending bank. That's our biggest struggle. How do we get them to come to us? Well, if they won't come to us, we got to go to them. That's what our competition's doing. That's what Amazon's doing. They're going to them. So how do we go to them? How do we push out and get more of our products throughout the workplace? And I think that's a challenge for the industry. And if we don't get behind that challenge and figure that challenge out, Amazon and other companies like that are really going to come in, and it's going to create a much bigger problem than what we realize today. And yes.
Well, just to follow up on that, we were discussing last week at USG, the struggle that I think our industry faces, and we as operators, we have all operators at different scale, right, at different sophistication. But even our suppliers on the technology side are, in many times, startups, right? Mm-hmm. They themselves are startups that are trying to push micro-market engineering or VMS packages. They don't integrate. That creates operational challenges for the operator who's using 3, 4, 5 systems to manage their business, which creates a bigger struggle to collect big data and do something with it, right? So I think our industry is in a situation of we're a collector of big data, but we don't know how to use it yet. And that's because nothing's layered on. nobody I know of, and if someone's using it, but what's layered on top of all of these mini systems to give us usable data, right? So the larger independents and the bigger nationals have think tanks and data analysts, and they can afford to do that. The smaller, medium-sized operators fight, how do I get data out of this that makes sense?
Right.
What we haven't done yet is get to a point where we have dashboards and usable intelligent data out of our systems. We're in a search for the data mode. So I'm just complaining right now, but what I'm not seeing is anyone trying to build a data tool to give us usable data from all the different systems we use.
Well, and I agree with you 100%. And the biggest problem, and that's some of what we shared with you about what we've been doing with operators. That is the overall concept that we had. That's the overall concept that we have today. It's still the concept. How do we do that? But the biggest problem that we have is lack of participation, back to your point. Some people are very reluctant to share their data for fear of competitive advantage, whatever. But the only way it's going to become useful for the industry is if we get past that and we put it in as the aggregate and we look at the data as a whole. That's where we're going to get real learnings, not what did this particular operator do or what did this one location do, but when we put it together, and that's something we're going to continue to work on, but that's not going to be a short fix. It's going to take time to do that. But one of the other things that you said, too, that every operator should expect, regardless of your size, where do you think the largest operators out there, where do you think they get a lot of their analytics and a lot of their data? It's not from their staff. They require that from the manufacturers that are coming in. That information that we shared with you from Kellogg's, if you take every one of the top 50 food, snack, beverage providers, they've got departments, buildings of people gathering data, working with data. They've got a lot of insights that you can use. And the larger operators expect that from them. When we go in, they expect us to be able to share with them what are some of the insights that Kellogg's has, that Mars has, Jack Link's, Flowers, whoever it is. So there's a lot of valuable stuff you can get there because, again, we said at the beginning, you really have to hone in, and there's no wrong answer, whatever you want to hone in on. Here's my data, and this is what I want to really fixate on to help drive my business, but now I need this other data. I need data from the manufacturers. What is the consumer trends? What are they thinking? What are they buying? And, we can debate, well, our customer is not the same customer, but it is the same customer. Who do we know in our vending or micro market doesn't go to a grocery store and buy too, or a convenience store? It's the same customer. It's just a different event. It's a different location.
On that question, and this is probably to the broker side, and we're USG members, what's the industry doing to break out of it's got to come from Vistar, it's got to come from a mainline, Vidliner or whatever. We find ourselves going out to do those Amazon-like products. We're having to buy outside of our USG relationship, I guess you'd say, because Vistar won't stock it or Vendor Supply the other one in our area. I spend as much at Sam's and DJ's and Costco and Amazon, all these places. If I could get rebate credit for that stuff, there's another point.
All right. And that, Charles, is I don't think there's going to be a fix for that problem anywhere in the near future and maybe never. The reason being is because the way the pricing models are set up, the way the programs are set up with the manufacturers and this kind of thing. And so if it's a price model off of a wholesale club, it doesn't have the same margin to offer the rebate, those kind of things. But the bigger issue, and the issue that Vistar gets into, Vendor Supply, Master, you name them, many of the distributors, goes right back to what Thad started with, and it's the Internet of Things. People are so connected. I don't care where you are, who you are. You open up your phone, you go to YouTube, here's an ad for this, for that. So here's all these new startup products and startup companies. Well, 20 years ago, we'd never know about them. They'd never get off the ground. But now, if they have a good social media campaign, they've got a good way of digital advertising, the startup companies are what you see the big giants buying. That's what you see Coke, Pepsi, Frito, Kellogg's. They buy these up that would never get started. And because of that, now the consumer wants them. So I think that situation, quite honestly, that's one that you got to capitalize on instead of, hey, my distributor doesn't carry this. You got to figure out where to go get it, because if the consumer wants it,
Well,
that's where you mess it.
How many of your customers are buying from Davenport or the grocery liner or from the C-store liners? Or
I would say probably nearly every one of them
Yeah.
buying from someone other than the traditional VIN distributor, because they have to. And from our world, you'd mentioned about a broker question. We don't get credit for what UNFI sells, but I tell people all the time when they're looking for certain items, you got to go to UNFI. They're the only ones that have that. I don't like it because then they end up buying other things that we do sell. But if we have to take care of the customer, we have to take care of the industry. And as long as the industry's healthy, we'll figure out what we need to do. But that's a problem that's just, I think, will continue to magnify because the distributors, you guys have the same problem. How much space is in your warehouse? How much space on your truck? Well, they got the same space problem too. So what do I stop carrying to bring in this seaweed chip? And maybe it will go over and maybe it won't. And so where do you place your bet? What do you do? So it's a very tough thing for everybody in the industry now.
And there is a solution to what you just described, but it's a solution that I don't know that I necessarily am a proponent of, and that is that your rebates, the manufacturers adopt the methodology of paying you based on the sale to the consumer, the actual scan. Now they're not going to be able to continue to pay the VDA and the rebate that you've got and pay from that. What they'll do is they'll take that entire bucket of money and say, you know what, the consumer is really who I want to see this penetration with. I don't care if it came from the club store. What I care about is that it ended up in Sally Sue's hand. So there is a solution that's there, but to Greg's point, it's nothing that's on the immediate horizon. It'll take us some time to get to that point. And you have to ask yourself then, was that the right decision? Did we want to get to that point?
When Kellogg's came to you and said there were 3 primary shopper profiles.
Yes.
That
Yes. Sure.
when you were looking at sales data from all these micro markets, would you try and apply that same methodology to micro market types to say, hey, we've got one kind of micro market, I can clearly see sales patterns here. We know that's industrial. The number 1 seller there is the Texas Unibond is number 2 seller.
Right.
Have you done anything to categorize micro markets so that we can have typical merchandising plans based on the type of micro market it is?
We did not use the same lens because Kellogg's focus was all about that consumer transaction. So
I don't mean the lens, but I mean the methodology.
the methodology, we took it and we looked at it from a standpoint of gray collar, the old school traditional demographic methodology. And so we looked at it from blue collar, white collar, gray collar, and that kind of thing.
No, but
I'm asking,
can we do that?
sales patterns and go backwards rather than what we know to be the economic forward.
And can
Right.
we do that, and would we want to do that? If you're willing to do that with us, we'd love to.
Absolutely. All right. I dropped my clicker. So I think we've already entered into the stage, but questions? It's my favorite M&M down there. A little bit nervous guy. Anything else from you guys? Because I realize Greg and I are the only things stopping you between, you and your lunch. So that's a dangerous spot to be in. But if there's no further questions, again, feel free to catch one of us anytime during the show. We'd love to answer any of the questions you've got. Thank you.